where A is a subset of R and C is a limit point of A, limit point or cluster point. Then we will say that limit extending to C fx equals L, extending to C fx equals L if for pre-assigned epsilon greater than 0 there exists a delta depends on that epsilon greater than 0 such that modulus of fx minus L less than epsilon. For 0 less than x 0 less than modulus of x minus c less than delta, right? That was the definition of limit. That means for every pre-assigned epsilon we need to find out one delta. If we can find it, then we will say that this limit exists or the limiting value is L. And if we can't find any delta for a particular epsilon, then we will say the limit does not exist. So that was the epsilon delta concept of limit. And we have also solved few problems. I gave you some homework. I hope all of you checked it and could solve it, as any of you didn't say anything about any doubt or anything. So I guess you have solved it, all of the examples. And we also got some divergence criteria in the last class. What was the divergence criteria or sequential approach of limit? That was the limit extending to C fx equals L. We will say the limit exists if for every sequence xn in A tending to C, if this imply that f of xn tending to L. If this happens, that is if the condition satisfied, then we will say this limit exists. That was the sequential approach of limit, right? Now we got few divergence criteria for that sequential approach and we used that to solve the problems, mainly to disprove the limit or to prove that the limit does not exist. I'm again repeating the divergence criteria. That was if xn tending to C, this will imply f of xn does not tending to L. If this happens, that is if we find some sequence xn such that it is tending to C but its functional value sequence is not tending to L, then we can say that the limit does not exist or limit is not converging to L. And another divergence criteria was we have to find out two sequences xn and yn. Both are tending to the same limit point C, but their functional value sequences, that is f of xn and f of yn, they are not tending to the same limit L. Then we also can claim that the limit does not exist or the limit is divergent. That was all the previous day's syllabus. Now we are moving to prove some theorems on limit. The theorems are very easy, just by using the concept of epsilon delta. That is, just using the definition of epsilon delta, we have to prove all these theorems. Theory number one is uniqueness of limit of a mapping. Uniqueness of limit. That means whenever we are saying a function fx is tending to the limit L as extending to C, this should be unique. That means this L should be always unique. That means not like that as extending to C, sometimes fx is tending to L, sometimes it is tending to L dashed, sometimes L double dash. No, this cannot be happen. This L should be one and only one. So the statement of the theorem is for a real valued function f, at any point C belongs to A, can have at most one limit. Okay, that means if the limit exists, it should be unique and one and only one. So let's prove it. Now we will prove it by contradiction. That is, if possible, let there exist two limits, L and L dashed. Then by after few steps, we have to show that L and L dashed both are same. So if possible, let if possible, let L and L dashed are two limits of f. Two limits of f. Then what we can say from the definition of limit? We can write limit extending to c fx equals L and limit extending to c fx equals L dashed. Then apply epsilon delta definition on both the notations. So from the first one, what we can write? That for preassigned epsilon greater than 0, for preassigned epsilon greater than 0, there exists a delta depends on that epsilon greater than 0. Now for the first notation we will get one delta, and from the second notation we will get another delta. So better we are using it as delta 1 and delta 2. So from the first notation we are writing for preassigned epsilon greater than 0, there existed delta 1. Okay, there exists a delta 1 depends on that epsilon greater than 0 such that modulus of fx minus L less than epsilon by 2. We can write it epsilon by 2 because epsilon is in our hand. We have to choose epsilon. We can choose however small it is. So suppose you gave me one epsilon, suppose you gave me epsilon equals 0.001. I'm saying no, this is not my epsilon. I will choose 0.001 by 2 or by 3 or by 4 or anything else. Epsilon is in our hand, and this should be true for any epsilon, for every epsilon. So instead of epsilon, I am choosing epsilon by 2. And why am I doing this? It will be clear just after few steps. Okay, so according to the definition, fx minus L is less than epsilon by 2 for 0 less than modulus x minus c less than delta 1. Right? This is equation number 1. Now again we have the second notation, that is limit extending to c fx equals L dashed. So what we can write from this notation? We will write that for same epsilon greater than 0, here we are keeping the epsilon same, okay, not another one, epsilon 1 or epsilon 2, because epsilon is in our hand. We can choose it whatever we want. So for same epsilon greater than 0, there exists delta 2 depends on that epsilon greater than 0 such that modulus of fx minus L dashed less than epsilon by 2 whenever 0 less than x minus c less than delta 2. Right? This is equation number 2. Now we will combine equation 1 and 2. So check equation 1 and 2. Equation 1 is this one, and which holds for this region, right? Now what does it mean by this region? X minus c less than delta 1. If we draw this, what will we get from x minus c less than delta 1? We can write it minus delta 1 less than x minus c less than delta 1, or c minus delta 1 less than x less than c plus delta 1, right? Obviously excluded c because there was 1 greater than 0. So this range difference c. So from there, if we draw this, it will look like, suppose this is our x, this is our c, this is c minus delta 1 and this is c plus delta 1, right? We got this from equation number 1. Now if you check equation number 2, what was equation number 2? That is fx minus L dashed is less than epsilon by 2 for this region, x minus c less than delta 2. Now if you expand it, what will you get? You will get c minus delta 2 to c plus delta 2. So there is somewhere c minus delta 2 or c plus delta 2. I don't know where it is. C minus delta 2 is less than c minus delta 1 or greater than c minus delta 1. I don't know. I'm keeping it somewhere in the real line. So the real line will look like this, the region. Now we have to combining these two region. That means this is also first condition is true for that region and second condition is true for that region. So what is the common region? The middle part. And for this common region, we can say equation number 1 and 2 both holds. So for that common region, what we have to take? We have to choose the minimum of delta 1 and delta 2. So let delta equals minimum of delta 1 comma delta 2. Okay. Then for that delta, both equation number 1 comma 2 hold. So what we can write? For 0 less than x minus c less than delta, modulus of fx minus L less than delta and not delta, epsilon by 2, and modulus of fx minus L dashed less than epsilon by 2. These two conditions hold for this region delta. Okay. Now we are starting with modulus of L minus L dashed, because we want to prove L and L dashed both are same. So starting with mod L minus L dashed. We can write it like this: minus L dashed plus L. Okay. Now adding plus fx and minus fx. So it will become fx minus L dashed plus L minus fx. Right? Now this plus this, using triangle inequality, what we can write? We can write this is lesser equal to modulus of fx minus L dashed plus modulus of fx minus L. Okay. That was L minus fx. You might say how it becomes fx minus L, because we are using mod, so L minus fx and fx minus L both are same. So this and this. Now this quantity already less than epsilon by 2 and this quantity is already less than epsilon by 2. This is equals epsilon. Okay. Now you got it that how, that why I have taken epsilon by 2 there, just because to make it the last line epsilon. For that reason I have chosen epsilon by 2. Okay. So now there we get that L minus L dash, this modulus value is less than epsilon. Now this is a modulus value, that means always greater or equal to 0. It cannot be negative. So it is greater or equal to 0. And again epsilon is in our hand. We can choose epsilon however small we want. And the relation will hold for every epsilon. Any epsilon you can choose, this will be true. That means epsilon tending to 0 in the limiting value. In the limiting value, this epsilon tending to 0, because we can choose epsilon as small as we want. So at the limiting position, this epsilon tending to 0, that means this is also tending to 0 and the left up part is also tending to 0. That means the middle part should be equal to 0. So L minus L dashed equals to 0, that is L equals L dashed. That means the limiting value or the limit is always unique. Okay. This proves the theorem. Next is moving to the next theorem, boundedness. Boundedness of a function. That is, here we will establish some relation between the boundedness and limit of a function. So before moving to the relation, we need to know when we called a mapping or a function is bounded. When we called a function f is bounded. We say it is bounded if, we say a function fx is bounded if modulus of fx is less or equal to m for all x belongs to some neighborhood v delta c. Okay. Then we will say that this fx is bounded in that region. In that v delta c neighborhood, this function fx is bounded. So whenever we are talking about boundedness, always a region comes. Okay. Always remind this, that this is bounded, but bounded in where? In whole real line, in whole complex plane? No, it is bounded in that interval. That means whenever you choose any x from that interval, the fx always should be less or equal to a certain quantity, which is denoted by capital M here, and this is called the upper bound. So whenever modulus of fx less or equal to m for all x belongs to some v delta c neighborhood, then this is said to be a bounded function. Okay. Now we will establish some relation between boundedness and limit of a function. Relation between boundedness and limit. So what's the statement? The statement is limit extending to CF, the statement of the theorem, limit extending to CF exist if limit extending to CF exist, then f is bounded on some neighborhood of C. Then f is bounded on some neighborhood of C. Okay. If the limit exists, then it should be bounded on some neighborhood. We have to prove it. So let's start with the given condition, that is the limit exists. So the proof is, let limit extending to C fx equals L, this exists. We have to prove fx is bounded in some neighborhood of C. That means we have to find some capital M such that modulus of fx less or equal to capital M. Now here we can apply the definition, epsilon delta definition of that limit. So what will we write using that epsilon delta definition of this line? We will write that for pre-assigned epsilon greater than 0, there exists a delta depends on that epsilon greater than 0 such that modulus of fx minus L less than epsilon for 0 less than x minus c less than delta. Right? Now epsilon is in our hand. We can choose it however small, however large we want to. So for that reason we are choosing a particular value of epsilon. So let epsilon equals epsilon 0. Okay, a particular value for our epsilon. So starting with this line, then it will become fx minus L less than epsilon 0. Again we have the inequality, that is mod fx minus mod L. This quantity is less or equal to mod of fx minus L. Right? This is a property of modulus, that is mod A minus mod B less or equal to mod A minus B. We are just using this over fx and L. So mod fx minus mod L less or equal to fx minus L, which is less than epsilon 0 from this line. Okay. So taking this one and this one, what will we get? Mod fx less than epsilon 0 plus mod L. Right? Now this is a constant part obviously, because epsilon 0 a particular value of epsilon and L is the limit, obviously this is constant. So fx less than this quantity, and which is true for all x where 0 less than x minus c less than delta, right, from the definition of limit. Now check what does it mean. This means x belongs to c minus delta comma c plus delta difference c, right? C is not included there. So we don't know the value of fx at the point c, that is f of c. We don't know the value of fc. So ultimately we get in that region fx is always less or equal to this epsilon plus mod L, right? Fx lies in that region for epsilon 0 plus mod L for this part, and we don't know about c, so we have to consider c from the different approach. So we don't know where lies fc. Fc could be here or could be here. Let's say fc is here. So for that reason we are considering the maximum between this point and FC. Now if FC lies here, then the maximum value will be this one, and if FC lies right hand side of this point, then the maximum value will be FC. So in whatever case our purpose will be solved, that is fx will be always less or equal to that maximum value. So we are taking let capital M equals maximum of epsilon 0 plus mod L comma FC. Then for all x belongs to C minus delta comma C plus delta, that is V delta C neighborhood, modulus of fx less or equal to capital M. Okay. This proves the boundedness of the function f. That means if the limit exists, then it should be bounded in some neighborhood. Now, what about the converse of the theorem? The theorem was limit exists, then it is bounded. Now, what about the converse? If it is bounded, always the limit exists or not? What do you think? A bounded function always has a limit or not? In the previous class, we already got one example where the converse does not hold. That is, it's a bounded function, but the limit does not exist. Can you tell me what the function is? Anyone? Have you heard about signum function? Signum function. What's the value of signum function? Or what's the range? X by mod x. When x, yes, and 0 when x equals to 0. Yes, this is signum function. That means it will take the value 1 if x greater than 0, minus 1 if x less than 0, and 0 if x equals 0. Now we have already checked in the last class that limit extending to 0, signum x does not exist. Right? And can anyone tell me about the boundedness? How will you prove that this is bounded? This is a bounded function.